Hey everybody, I am really excited to present my friend Brent Turner here. Brent, let me play this video for you folks, for first of all, folks, because for those of you who know have been longtime viewers of Zenny62 on YouTube, you remember this young man way back 17 years ago. I'm going to take you back right now, everybody back. We're going to have a little fun because this is history. And when you see this, all right, we're gonna go from there. Hold on a second. This is gonna be a lot of fun. And here we go. Boom. Oh, wait a minute. Making absolutely certain one thing. Make sure the audio. Yep, cool. We got it. All right. We are ready, so you can hear it. I don't want to. There. Now.
Brent Turner, you're the czar of election reform.
Well, I'm here trying to help. We're trying to make sure that the progressives and the good government officials are aware that if you're going to use a computer in an election system, it has to run on open source software code rather than secret software code, and you always have to have a paper ballot working in conjunction. So we're just trying to do the best we can for election reform at the Democratic Convention.
Are they listening?
It's a slow grind, but I think we're gaining some traction.
Is there a website where people can go to check out the information?
They can. The best website that I know of is www.openvoting.org. Thank you.
That's something else. And for this, 17 years ago, I wrote as follows down below. And this, I said, my friend Brent Turner is on a focused mission to make sure our voting process is safe and free from the chance of fraud using open source voting, where you can see the software code of the electronic voting systems. And over that 17-year period, this friend of mine has waged a singular battle to make voting safe and effective for everybody, thereby maintaining our democracy. He's battled and survived cancer. He has been through the ringer, and now he is finally, and I'm proud to say, elections assistant registrar for the County of Shasta, California. Congratulations, Brent.
Thank you.
This is huge, man. I mean, it is a majorly huge milestone. I mean, first of all, consider all things considered, and looking back, um, what do you think?
Well, I think we had the right answer, which is good. So the answer remains the same, as Robert Plant said. The song remains the same. We don't change the message. We just adapt to the new circumstances that have evolved. We did manage to deploy open source election systems in first ever in the country, Choctaw County, Mississippi. And then the state of New Hampshire soon followed. Unfortunately, California is lagging behind New Hampshire and Mississippi, but we're hopeful. And now Shasta County has shown an interest, perhaps a disinterest in electronic voting systems in their current condition. But we're going to try to make some changes, some inroads there, some upgrades, and we'll see. It's going to be a process, but we're hopeful.
How did it come to fruition that you are in the position you're in now?
Well, interestingly, my buddy Clint Curtis was in Florida and looking at the California situation, and I think he was testifying, same as I was, in front of the Board of Supervisors in Shasta County, and they appointed him to be the new registrar of voters. He called me and asked me to be the assistant registrar, and I accepted, and we now are working on best practices for Shasta County. And I have hope that it may go from being basically a dust up, a place where there was great turmoil, to a place that can be looked at for guidance when it comes to election system specifics and protocols.
So, what are the next steps for you? I mean, first of all, let's make it clear: you are the number two, not the number one.
Correct.
And interestingly, um, the man literally yanked you for you to be in there. How to tell my viewers of what I think is a really interesting story.
Well, I asked him, what his plans were, and we got into further conversation. That I think it became apparent that he needed or would benefit from some support. His assistant registrar is no longer there, and a lot of the folks in the office are in transition. So I'm hoping that we, through teamwork and good effort, that we make it a county to be looked at for by other counties. And I think Clint, because of his expertise in election system security, software, and basically the entire ecosystem surrounding elections, he'll have a good path toward success. And I want to keep a positive attitude, because even though there's lots of competing interests in Shasta County, as there is in every county, I still think that the nonpartisan aspect of this will unite people once they get real clear on the information. And there is obviously a tremendous amount of disinformation in the space of election security.
What kind of problems has Shasta itself had to endure with respect to its voting systems?
Well, they're in the same position as every other jurisdiction in the country. They're relegated to using systems that operate on proprietary code, and the vendors therefore have a unusual amount of influence over the process. Unfortunately, only New Hampshire and Mississippi have moved forward toward the better systems. California was in a position to move forward with the system upgrades to what we call GPL v3 open source software paper ballot systems. But unfortunately, the current Secretary of State, Dr. Weber, has not granted permission to those systems to move forward. We're looking for her to certify those systems and allow at least trials or deployment in California. I think you probably remember our effort in San Francisco to move the County of San Francisco forward, and we almost were in position to do so.
Yep.
But in the final moments, that effort was not successful. We also obtained $300 million for Los Angeles to move forward with an open source voting system. And if you remember, at the end of that attempt, both Dean Logan and then Secretary of State Alex Padilla declared that system to be an open source system. Unfortunately, it was not, as discovered, an open source system. The DoD and the Open Source Initiative both verified my position, our position, that in fact it did not qualify as an open source voting system. So that 300 million was lost, and the effort dissipated at that time. Luckily, a vendor called Voting Works, Benedita out of MIT, came along and supplied the system for Mississippi and New Hampshire. So that was a wonderful event, and I was very glad to have managed to, as you mentioned, survive some health issues and such, to see that deployment occur, because that was a major victory, the first deployments being the most difficult. Now we see Shasta County pop up. They had the opinion that the voting systems were deficient, and I don't think they were overwhelmed with the personalities of the vendors. So they attempted to dismiss the vendor, at that point Dominion, from Shasta County and go to a hand count, which is also comes with different entanglements. Let's say there's not a clear opinion regarding the benefits or detriments of hand counting. Some people think it would be better than a proprietary system of electronic tabulation, and I can't necessarily quibble with that, whether it's better or worse. But obviously, it is not legal right now to hand count previous to the electronic tabulated count. So in order, you must first obtain the electronically tabulated count, then you can go into hand counts after that for audit purposes. I think that Shasta County at that moment would have preferred a complete hand count, but my understanding is Gavin Newsom disallowed that from proceeding. So they were then relegated to a replacement proprietary code system, namely Hart InterCivic. That's what they're using now. They're still frustrated with the inability to look into the software and feel that, as we feel, inhibits oversight and therefore is a security detriment. I think with time, the Secretary of State may capitulate and allow these better systems to come forward, and we certainly want to pressure her to do so.
I know you're familiar with the situation in Alameda County, Brent.
Yes.
And I had the pleasure of interviewing Tim Dupuy, in 2022, prior to the November election, which gave us Oakland Mayor Shang Tao in a dramatic situation, if you will. Do you think that the outcome there was due to the use of Dominion voting systems? And I want to also add, there's a almost 2-hour interview I did with Tim, where he basically admits that we can't see the source code, among other things.
Right.
What are your thoughts?
I saw that interview.
Oh, thank you.
Very, very damning of the current condition. By the way, that interview was very damning because it showed that Tim is relegated to the back seat position when it comes to administering the election. And that is due to the proprietary nature of the software code and the configuration of the system itself. So I'm sympathetic to the clerks, to the administrators that have to deal with these systems. But we, for the most part, perhaps do okay, the best we can. But certainly this next gen of systems will inspire voter confidence with the open source software. And of course, when we started this effort 30 years ago, which I've been involved 25, and I think that clip you showed was from 17 years ago.
Yeah.
First of all, we had to explain what open source was, and it's a little counterintuitive. People think that might mean open to manipulation, but of course we know it means open to oversight and that it's a security benefit environmentally for these systems. So now we're in a little different position. The youth and people coming up now, they know what open source is. They instinctively know you don't want secret software running your election systems. And also they know that transparency is a positive. It gives the defenders a head start, not the hackers.
Yeah, that April 5th, 2008 video I presented, that was our first one. And so we've since been on, this is now including this 4 times. Unbelievably, I thought it was more, but we've talked so many times. But curious to know what, I'll just put it right out there. Can we talk about the 2024 election for a sec?
We can. I'm going to keep everything very nonpartisan. I think everybody knows where I come from and what's gone on in the country. But out of respect for my brand new position, I'll try not to spark off too much. But ask away, please. I want to be forthright with you.
Is it out of line to ask you if you think the 2024 election was hacked in some states?
I think that I've made my position clear regarding the vulnerability of these systems. Whether or not certain elections were rigged, I don't think is the essence. I think the essence is whether or not they were riggable and to what degree. As we understand, I think at this point, having an adult conversation, that if you allow people to tamper with election results, they might very well do that because they're so driven toward the result. And it seems wild-minded and bizarre that anybody would be so contemptuous of democracy to actually affect results inappropriately. But I think we have to stipulate that that in fact is the case, and we need to make sure, for the benefit of both sides of the political aisle, that these systems are absolutely as tight as possible. That being said, they are nowhere near as tight as they should be. The vendors know it, the people know it, the experts know it. Now, when I say the people know it, they're sort of coming to understand it. Some of the ins and outs, the intricacies of the software and the technology. Now we're also talking about other systems that are not ground-based involved in the analysis. So it becomes very twisty. And of course, again, the disinformation has really created a rough environment for elections.
Hey, let's talk about that. What kind of disinformation is out there that you want to alert people to?
Well, I think mainly anybody that says, be very afraid, send me your money, has got to be looked at with a keen eye. I think that there is, I won't say hysteria, but there may be overblown focus on certain aspects and not enough focus on others. But all these aspects deserve attention. And the fact remains, even if you have particularly unlikable people advocating for particular security upgrades, it doesn't really diminish the fact that those upgrades might be beneficial, even though the spokesperson is unlikable. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt, really do deep dives, know where your information is coming from. I think a simple answer to all of this is, if you have good paper ballot management systems, good database management systems, voter rolls and things, and in the end, a system that is believable and appropriate for tabulating votes, then you're on a good road. Our solution is, again, general public license open source systems. We have to be very careful to keep saying general public license, because there are wise guys in the space that will come along and peddle open source systems that are not general public license. And there's nuancing in that licensing scheme. So we want to make sure we're always taking the high ground, and that we're not buying into any slippery slopes that allow business to compete with the protection of the system.
If I may, for those of us who are not well versed on these things, what's the difference between general public license and non-general public license?
It's a copyleft, copyright scenario. It gets very complex. The idea is, my understanding with the GPL system, it's beneficial to the security environment in the end, because it disallows certain practices that would be allowable with the different brands of license. So there's little holes as you go down the chain that occur with the non-GPL licenses. And the GPL, I think, in the expert opinion of those who are very well versed in this, is the higher ground of the licensing available.
How do we make sure it's GPL versus not GPL? At what point do we look in there ourselves, or can we look in there, or do we have to trust what we're told by the minders of the operation?
That's a very interesting question. Most of us don't have the chops to
I don't.
go ahead and inspect code like that.
Right.
But if you,
I'm a coder, but I don't know what I'm looking for in that code.
Right. But the idea is, if you get enough eyeballs on the code and a large enough group of experts keeping track of such matters, they will reveal the truth. Because if one of them was to be outside the conclusions of the others within this open source expert environment, that would be analyzed to the nth degree, and people are very protective of their reputations, so they tend to want to have a strong answer. That being said, of course, there can be different opinions, but I think it's a very relevant question, because making sure that once you have that open source situation, that you now have enough eyeballs to maintain the sanctity of the event and make sure you're really looking at that code. Maybe Joe Smith next door doesn't know how to read code and analyze it that well, or scrutinize the difference between GPL or a non-GPL license, but he may be able to reach out to that group of experts that are making sure that there is a monitoring process occurring.
Now, if I heard you correctly, Shasta has installed this new system.
No,
Okay.
no,
But is going to, or
no. Well, we shall see. They got rid of Dominion. They were looking to hand count, I believe, and then they were thrown back in to the proprietary mix and chose Heart InterCivic.
okay.
But now they're operating with Heart InterCivic, and I think they're looking to the future, but that's where they are in the moment.
Now, you mentioned Heart InterCivic in the case of the state of California too, as well, right? If I'm not mistaken. Or
The open source systems are the ones that are looking to be certified, that thus far have not been certified
okay,
by Secretary of State Weber.
okay, and they are still pushing Dominion.
I'm sorry, who is pushing
The
Dominion?
state. I'm sorry, the state.
The state has certified Dominion. They
Okay.
are a certified system. ES&S is certified. Heart InterCivic is certified. So the counties have to pick from the certified vendors. Currently, Voting Works is not one of them. Although on a federal level, Voting Works is doing well when it comes to being federally recognized, working with the EAC and showing that national leadership. We're just behind the times in California, unfortunately.
So the common citizen voter, what system should they ask for? Obviously, I would think it's not Dominion because we had so many problems with them, or is it?
You know, Dominion is interesting. I think there is a bit of a trap set
Ah,
regarding Dominion, because a political party shouldn't fall in love with a particular vendor of a voting machine.
well said. Well,
Just because you
can you
win,
repeat that, Brent?
huh?
Can you repeat that, please?
I said that political parties should not fall in love with voting system vendors just because they're celebrating a recent victory. Uh, that's a that's a double-edged sword, and we've seen it cut now. So I would be very hesitant. And as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with Willie Brown
Ah,
after the loss. I said, "Hey Willie, you forgot to tell Kamala what I mentioned to you." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "I told you to tell her don't concede, and that there's something wrong with the voting machines."
mm-hmm,
And he said, "Son of a blah blah blank
mm-hmm,
blank."
mm-hmm,
I do remember you mentioning that. Well,
mm-hmm.
she didn't raise any squabble in a timely fashion regarding the results. Everything went silent. So that ship has sailed. But for the future, we want to make sure that to retain voter confidence, if you did want to take a real hard look at the inside makings of the event, that you would have access. And currently we do not. And I think it's going to continue to raise its head.
Why do you think that it's so difficult to change voting systems in the California context, considering what we've been through, particularly in Alameda County?
I think it has to do with the tech bros, Silicon Valley, and the amount of money that goes around political circles.
Hmm.
Microsoft certainly.
Whoa, 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 whoa! I gotta ask you that question. You said, and the amount of money that goes around political circles, and you know, I, I, I if I were a German Shepherd, my ears would have went boop. Explain that, please, for those who are They're gonna
Well,
wonder what you meant.
there's lobbyists involved, and there's donations involved, and you've got tech bros, and you've got Silicon, and you've got vendors, and you have Microsoft as a thought leader in the intellectual property software community.
Right.
So all those factors create an environment of a log jam so that you just cannot get open source bills pushed through. Although I do know that one I believe went through or is going through regarding the prison systems and the utilization of open source software for their systems. But when it comes to elections, the third rail of all political issues, the California has been very hesitant to move forward with the open source systems, and a strong obvious school of thought is that they are being prohibited from moving forward because Microsoft doesn't like open source, the vendors don't like open source, they like it the way it is. They don't think of the big picture, they think of their profit margins and their shareholder interest. So there you have it in a nutshell. And I'm being blunt about it. It obviously is a saddening situation for the democracy. And I think that that the movie, the documentary, The Real Activist, that I was featured in with former CIA Director Jim Woolsey, goes into more detail about that particular issue of Microsoft and other vendors out of Silicon and the intellectual property world really prohibiting and interfering with the national security here.
I have to ask you about something that I happened to find here when I was looking. You know, I had the photograph of your boss, but then on the other side, in the front, I happened to see this interesting article. I don't know if you're at liberty to talk about this. If you're not, I understand. But it reads: After 4 days in his appointed role as registrar, and this is uh, on May 25th. Vote as registrar of voters, Clint Curtis announces campaign during private quote town hall unquote. Curtis announced that he'll be running for the registrar of voters position in 2026, making negative comments about his top staffer, assistant registrar of voters Joanna Francesca, who's also running for the seat. Some
Mhm.
members of the press were excluded from the event despite it originally being billed as public. So this, so you're basically replacing Miss Francesca, is that it?
That's correct.
Okay. And so how would, if she won, how would that affect you?
Oh, I don't know. And
Wow.
the good news is I'm there to do my best for however whatever length of time serves the purpose. She seems like a nice person. I don't know much about her. I've been called to duty to support the current registrar, and that's what I'll do. Clint, I happen to know personally, is a person that testified under oath in front of Congress regarding being requested by a sitting congressman to create software that would manufacture and manipulate votes. So I find him to be a brave person that has endured this issue, didn't
Indeed.
didn't choose it, but lived up to his patriotic duty. So I'm here to support his effort toward transparency.
Yeah, so we should basically root for and Shasta voters vote for Clint Curtis next year. Um,
I can't get into that.
I know
Uh,
you can, but I'm saying that they should.
I can't get into that, but I will say that I know him to be a stand-up person, and the fact that he's now in Shasta County, which is a tough geographic,
Mhm.
to come into to try to assist, I think speaks volumes, and we have high hopes.
Wow, something else here. So getting back to where we are at Shasta County and everything else and what you're doing, uh, procedurally, as you go in and you go to work, what are the next projects that are in your face along the road to making the voting situation better for Shasta County residents?
Well, Zenny, when you contacted me to congratulate me on my position, that was a few days back, and today was actually my first day on the job.
Wow.
So went in and met with the nice people that do their duty and do the daily work, and everybody was very pleasant. I think we have an eye toward interfacing with the Secretary of State. We have an eye toward public outreach and community involvement, enhancing voter confidence, and then getting to the less the grittier work of the systems themselves and making sure that best practices are employed. Eventually, if we can get certification of a better system, perhaps we'll root for that and see what happens there and try to create Shasta County as a showplace for voting rights and integrity. Uh, People might say, well, why Shasta County? Well, why Choctaw County, Mississippi? Sometimes things just happen in places where you would not expect them to necessarily be on the front line of such an issue. But this is what's happening there. And I think, and I'm glad for you giving it attention. The timing was perfect. So even though I'm not making much public statement, I'm gonna, have that conversation with you, and I'm glad to let you know what's unfolded.
Now, I'm honored that you're here, by the way.
Thank you.
You've been fighting the good fight in this area for a long time, and it's right and just that you are in the position you are in. And if let me ask you, uh, there is a possibility, without being too specific, that there may be a gigantic shakeup in a certain county that you and I are very familiar with, and it may lead to a new registrar. Would you possibly be interested?
No comment.
Gotcha. Uh,
I have to learn how to say that. No comment.
yeah, I don't know that
By the
you've
way,
never.
by the way, that's the first time I've ever said it.
I was gonna say,
I'm going to
folks,
practice it.
this is
But
Mr. This
I
is
have to be very sensitive to this
yep,
position and appropriate, because it's so important, and we don't want to disincentivize anyone or
right,
make people think that there are interests coming into play that affect their vote. And
right.
so I just want to be very sensitive to all of it. They already know, I'm sure, it's apparent to people who has been a Democrat, who's
Mm,
been a Republican. I think the idea is to bring people together on this one issue because I believe we can all agree regarding the sanctity of the vote. I mean, not everybody is honest and fair minded, but for those of us that are that and
hmm.
strive to be that, I think we all agree, both sides of the aisle, there is a sanctity to the vote counting process, and we want to employ best practices.
What message would you like to share with the viewers as we close? I promised, I said 30 minutes. We're going a little longer, but I don't want to make you upset with me. So, but seriously, what what would you like to say to the viewers? What message do you want them to take away from this exchange that we had?
I think that no matter where you are on the political spectrum, that we are all striving to keep our democracy and better our democracy. So I would want to impart a feeling of hope that even though there may be moments where it is hard to keep hope, I think it's great to keep hope in your heart, and I think it's going to be shown moving forward that at least on the issue of election systems, the one thing that we're focused on and talking about tonight, there is movement toward a betterment of the systems, and with good leadership coming from both political parties, we can get there together as a nation. And I'm hoping that we all are here to see that day.
Brent, congratulations, my friend.
Thank you, Seti. Thanks for your support and your attention to this issue.
And hey, Brent, don't move a muscle. Everybody, we'll be back with more later. Check out Shasta County and also do a research on what my friend has done over the years. It's been path breaking. He's gotten the ear of everyone from local Alameda County elected officials and Mayor Harris, former Mayor Harris, to Hillary Clinton. And I remember
President Obama.
That's right, President Obama.
Yeah.
So
Tulsi Gabbard.
There you go. Yes, Tulsi. Yeah.
Everybody is paying attention all of a sudden, and this is an interesting moment. And,
no, Tulsi's been nice to me, folks. I can attest to that. So she's, all the politics. Don't at me with all that stuff, folks. But because I will tell you, of all the presidential candidates that came to the 2019 California State Democratic Convention, Brent, she was the only one to give me an interview. And even Cory Booker, and I have this on video, Cory Booker did everything in his physical power to ignore me as I'm trying to ask him a simple question. The simple question is that I was asking him is, well, what do you think of the calls for impeachment of Donald Trump? Simple question, right? He didn't want to answer it. He didn't want to answer it from me. But he was willing to talk to others. It was very strange. And whereas by contrast, Tulsi Gabbard gave me 23 seconds, boom, not a problem, which is the way it should be.
She wrote the federal legislation for open source voting.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she did. So if you research that, Tulsi did as a Democratic senator and a congressperson, and then on the other side, we've had good legislative support from many Republican senators and in members of Congress. We have been issued letters of support by presidential candidates. As you know, we worked with President Obama inside the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy under Dr. John Holdren. We just haven't been able to break that final barrier until Voting Works did it in Mississippi, and then the good Secretary of State in New Hampshire. So this is going to continue to trend, and I'd love to come back and do another show with you.
Yes.
Maybe in 6 months, when I have a good report on what has been going on in Shasta County.
Sounds like an outstanding idea.
Great. Thanks, Denny.
All right, folks. Hey, don't move muscle, folks. Don't move muscle. Brent, subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark ZennyReport.com. That ends this stream.